Hello and welcome to TheAIbumMan. Today I'm talking about Dream Theater, who I went to see at the Manchester Apollo on the 13th of February 2014. So this is a concert review of that performance, and it was quite an interesting tour from Dream Theater, as it was an evening with tour, which meant no support acts. And in fact they seemed to split it into two acts and then the encore. There was even sort of an interlude, a break between the acts, which is quite interesting. Not something you often come across in concerts. I think the only other concert I've been to where they did that was when I saw Roger Waters perform The Wall, because the two different discs, effectively, they decided to split it up. And yeah, so that was quite interesting, and I believe this was originally going to be the tour after Black Clouds and Silver Linings. So Portnoy, I've heard Portnoy talk about that they were going to do a sort of an evening with tour, and they were going to play the 12-step alcoholism suite, but of course that never came into be as Portnoy left, and we have Mangini. And this tour is to support their 2013 studio album, self-titled release, Dream Theater, shockingly enough. And I mean, I love that album. It was one of my favourite albums of the year, definitely top 5, I think. But I know some Dream Theater fans weren't as keen, some saw it as a bit too commercial. I've never quite understood that criticism, but that's how some saw it. And it's a bit of a mixed bag. You look on the Amazon reviews particularly, and you see people who like it, people who don't, on YouTube as well, and on the internet. But in general, the reception was pretty positive, and I certainly loved the album. It had everything I wanted. It had a 25-minute epic, it has an instrumental, it had, just catchy songs, heavier songs. I just loved it, really varied, interesting, and I thought better than the dramatic turn of events in 2011, which though I did enjoy. So let's get straight into this, and let's talk about Act 1. So there was a sort of the False Awakening suite, which opened up the self-titled album. They used that as sort of their intro before they came on stage. And then the songs they played in the first act that are from the new album. They played The Enemy Inside, The Looking Glass, and Enigma Machine, and Along for the Ride. Now, Enemy Inside, I thought, that was a pretty damn good opener. That was the not big, but it was the single from the self-titled album, and I really liked it. I mean, yes, that was a bit more commercial. It was, it's a really catchy song, but it's also quite heavy in places, and it's a fairly standard Dream Theater single, but really catchy, really fun. And then The Looking Glass, that's basically the nicknamed Limelight 2.0, the Rush sounding song. Very Rush sound, but Dream Theater always sounded quite a lot like Rush. They've always been, well, not all the time, but what I meant to say is they're hugely inspired by Rush. That's what I'm trying to bloody say. They're hugely inspired by Rush, always have been. They, were huge Rush fans before they started the band. And The Looking Glass, performed very, very well. And Enigma Machine was particularly interesting out of those tracks because they had a drum solo from Mike Mangini. Now, last time I did a concert review of Dream Theater, I heavily criticised Mike Mangini's drum solo. I was hugely critical because I really didn't enjoy it. I didn't think it was very good. I thought, in fact, it was one of the worst drum solos I've ever seen in my life. And I still maintain that I didn't leave a good impression after the departure of Portnoy. But here, it's really quite good. Very short, very sweet, just to the point. I mean, it didn't go on longer than it needed to, and it was just very well crafted solo. And then some of the other songs they played from the other albums, they played On the Backs of Angels, Breaking All Illusions from Dramatic Turn of Events. And they were also interesting. The most interesting one had to be Trial of Tears in the first act. That's from Falling Into Affinity. Not one of my favourite albums. In fact, most Dream Theater fans consider it their worst, and I pretty much do as well, honestly. I don't like the album particularly. Trial of Tears is definitely one of the better songs like that, and Lines in the Sands, the fantastic Derek Sherinian song. But, it was decent live. It was decent. And of course, we'll be talking more about the individual performances after I talked about the set. But in Act 2, this is the one I was really sceptical about when I looked at the set. Now, I mean, Act 2 ended with Illumination Theory, which I was so happy about. They played that in its entirety, and that was just absolutely wonderful. It was marvellous, spectacular. It was everything you'd want from a live version of that amazing song. Just absolutely breathtaking performance by every band member. But Preceding it was the Awake suite. So yes, they played The Mirror, Lie, Lifting Shadows Off a Dream, Scarred, and Space Divest to celebrate the, oh god, what is it, 20th anniversary of Awake this year. Now, I know a lot of you out there think Awake is Dream Theater's best album. It's certainly one of your favourites. It's not one of mine. In fact, it's one of my absolute least favourite Dream Theater albums. It's just never clicked with me. I mean, and out of it, I like the first half way more. I really like Caught in a Web. I love the Erotomania suite's great with The Silent Man, particularly one of my favourite Dream Theater songs, even though it's quite a simple ballad, it's just, I really like it. And 6 O'Clock as well, the opener, great tracks, but instead they decided to play the second half of the album. The half of the album I've never really liked that much, including one of my least favourite Dream Theater songs of all time, Space Divest. But we'll talk about that in a sec. So, The Mirror, Lie, Lifting Shadows Off a Dream, Scarred, I mean, they were better live than they are in the studio, I would say. I've never liked the production on Wake as well. I don't think that's ever helped. Yeah, they were definitely better live, but was I hugely keen on them? Yeah, I mean, you know, you get in the moment with Lifting Shadows Off a Dream, that's a good song. The Mirror is a good song, but Scarred, I'm not huge on. Same with Lie. And then Space Divest. It's definitely not one of my favourites. I don't know why they decided to play it. It was a very Kevin Moore song. The previous keyboardist before Jordan Rudess, it was basically his song. I mean, his lyrics, his music, it was his song. And why they decided to play it, I don't know. In fact, I've even said they wouldn't have included it on the album if it hadn't been for him, like, pushing it to be on. It just seems an odd choice. It was, I mean, Jordan Rudess did a very, very good job of it. And again, it was better than in the studio, but it wasn't amazing. And same with the Awake suite, it wasn't quite for me. I mean, it was, you know, still very enjoyable. It definitely wasn't bad at all. You know, I've definitely seen worse songs at concerts, but it wasn't my favourite part of the concert. That was to come. And the encore after the Awake, which was decent, then it was the Metropolis Part 2 suite. And if you know, Metropolis Part 2 is my third favourite album of all time. No, fourth favourite album of all time. So I'm a pretty big fan of Metropolis Part 2, my favourite Dream Theater album as well. And they played from that Overture 1928, Strange Déjà Vu, A Dance of Eternity, and Finally Free. And that was because it's its 15th anniversary this year, so quite interesting. You know, paying attention to the anniversaries, which happened to be, you know, a couple this year. So yeah, I was so happy to hear those songs because I'm such a huge fan of the album. To hear anything from Metropolis Part 2 is amazing, particularly something like The Dance of Eternity. That's one of my favourite instrumental songs of all time. I absolutely love The Dance of Eternity. And then Finally Free, another of my absolute favourite Dream Theater songs, and that to me, that was the pinnacle moment of the concert. They ended with Finally Free, and that's just such a climactic song. The crescendo of that is just amazing. It really should just end like every concert with that. I mean, it's one of the best ends for an album, I think, ever. I can't think of many closing songs that rival it at all, and you know, especially in the concept, how it just works so well. And as an end of a concert, it just works so well. They made it so climactic, as I said, you know, crescendo, so good. And yeah, the other songs as well, they played Overture 1928, Strange Déjà Vu, absolutely outstanding as well. So, what about the musicianship then? Well, that was pretty much what you'd expect from Dream Theater, honestly. I can't say I have a huge amount to say on it. I mean, James LeBray's voice is, I think, still really good. I still think his voice is pretty damn fantastic. I mean, he can't quite hit the notes he used to, you know, before the whole food poisoning thing that seemed to render his voice very bad for a while. But he can still, you know, his voice has recovered a lot since then. In the earlier 2000s, it was quite patchy, but now it's strong again, and he can really hit those notes. I mean, damn, he can hit some properly high notes live. Mike Mangini, as I said before, I was a lot more impressed by his drumming this time around, I have to say. He just felt more confident in his performance. I felt last time, he felt like the new kid on the block. He was trying to prove himself, but trying too hard. Here, he just felt settled in. He felt like he'd been in the band for years and years and years, not just since, 2010 he came in, 2011? I can't quite remember, honestly. And yeah, he just felt part of the band. And then, as usual, you have John Myung on the bass, always, I think, quite underrated, because he's such a big part of Dream Theater sound, but because he isn't as, well, the bass, you know, isn't ever as high in the mix. You don't notice it, but live particularly you do when he's playing. I think it's a 6-string bass he plays most of the time, and damn, one of the best basses I've ever seen. And then Jordan Rudess always impresses on the keys, the wizard, and his gadgets and iPads and the odd sound effects he makes. I mean, the keyboard solo in Along for the Ride was still a bit off. The voicing you see used for that was just, I still don't like them very much. I don't know what the hell possessed him for that. It just didn't fit with the song. But still, absolutely wonderful. And then, of course, John Petrucci. You know, he is the main guy in Dream Theater at the moment. After Portnoy's departure, he pretty much is a lot of Dream Theater, let's just say. His solos, fantastic as usual. He can shred, you know, as fast as anyone, but also plays melodically and delicately as anyone. And yeah, just drives the songs very well, and one of the greatest guitarists ever, in my opinion. I do love John Petrucci a lot. Certainly one of my favourite metal guitarists, because in my list of favourite guitarists, there really aren't that many metal guitarists. I'm not a fan particularly of shredders as saying they're some of the greatest. I mean, I do like shredding, but I don't think it's as... I don't regard it as highly as being able to sort of, you know, create delicacy and emotion. You know, think people like B.B. King, you know, that's where guitar playing's at, not someone shredding at 400 miles an hour like Ingrid Malmsteen or Steve Vai. You know, that's just my personal preference. Anyway, none of those were at the Dream Theater concert. As odd as that would have been, that would be a pretty eclectic performance, I have to say. But still, fantastic band. Enjoyed a lot though. The Awake suite, as I said, not really my cup of tea, as much so as the other stuff they played. I would have preferred them to do an Images and Words suite, even though it's not an anniversary of that at all, but, you know, just throw it in there, because why not? It's an amazing album. Anyway, this has been the Album Man, still is the Album Man, and thanks for watching, comment, subscribe, and as usual, long live rock and roll, and finally up to date with my concert reviews. Yay.